Oh, so final exam review, spring 16A is everything I did this morning in class. So I started with final exam review, and then we did something that was kind of helpful for the project in it, so I thought the students would probably actually want to have a copy of that. And so that's there. That's just kind of the work I did in the morning on it. So I'll probably post a spring 16B from this class today. Thank you. All right. Looking for, we got Excel already. The time lap brought. There's like 4 things. Repeat this one. Chart. So this is, you don't have to think about the algorithm, you just have to map from what this thing says into VBA. We'll that one. There's another kind of review here for the clue batch. It's just doing a little bit different information. We probably won't do this one, but we're going to start here on orders because this gets us into a topic where I have given you the building blocks for this. This is going to require a nested loop. There's nothing new here, but we really haven't put it together in this way, and there's going to be a problem, as I said, quite similar to this on the final exam. So let's go ahead and start here. We'll work this problem together. But what I want to do is I want to have less thinking for myself going on here, and so I'm going to just be, I'll be the guy typing, and I want you guys to help me figure out this problem. So here's the idea. What we have is a list of students, and then we have, I don't know if these are scores or these are blood pressure numbers. Anyway, it's a person with a bunch of numbers that correspond to that person. We don't know what the numbers are or what they mean. But here's what we'll notice. We can have an arbitrary number of people. In other words, we might add on more people, and each person has an arbitrary number of values for them. So some people have, here, have just 4. Other people have a bunch, however many that is. That's R minus C. It's a bunch of values. And so the idea here is that we need to be able to go through this whole set of data, figure out what the average is and the maximum for this. And we're going to, of course, we can do that really easily with formulas right here in the cell, but we got to do it with VBA. And so we're just kind of using this as an example to test your ability to do a nested loop and to be able to count variable values and so forth. So that's what we're after. I'm going to get started here by opening up my Visual Basic editor. Get culture. What is get culture? That seems strange. Oh, that's my ribbon X code from something. I wonder what that's from. Okay, anyway, I'm going to be here on my, I'm going to close that. You don't have that, I guess. And I'm going to insert a module. I got to have a module to start with. Apparently, my daughters have been changing what I have on my background. So what's my background this week? I don't know. We got to peek because it looks intriguing. It's Transformers. Wait a minute. Make sure it looks fabulous. That's good advice for the final exam. Make sure it looks fabulous. Okay. Was there something else over there? I said I'm working on it. Okay. I have 2 daughters. And somehow, about 4 years ago, they really got into Transformers. And they write Transformer stories, and they publish them online, and they have a following and such. I'm not among their following, but now I just recorded that. I haven't read any of their stuff. Their mom has. Their mom loves it. I'm sure it's great. Sub. Let's get started. We're going to solve this problem. Here's the keyword, sub. All right. So what do I got to put next after sub? Someone, talk to me. What do we got? Orders. I'll call it orders. Okay. I don't know if it's orders, but as long as it's a valid identifier here, a valid token, we're okay. All right. Now we have a couple of those kind of fundamentally 2 different approaches that we can take here. Look, I've got something that I'm going to have to do over and over and over again. I can either start by saying, let me think about the overness. Let me start by thinking, how do I want to go through just the looping? How do I want to control the whole structure? Or I can start by saying, well, let me just do one of them, and after I've got one of them working, let me try to figure out how to build a loop around it. My preference is to think about the loop first. So before I've got any of the logic in there, let me just get in control of the loop, make sure that I can go across all of the rows. So let's start with that. So someone tell me, what am I going to do? What I want to do is just make sure that I can get through and iterate across all of these names. Remember that I don't know how many there's going to be. Right now there's 7. Rows 2 through 8. We could have one to go on row 9, row 10, and so forth, so we've got to be able to handle that. So what am I going to do? Anyone want to get me started here? Okay, so let's define some variables. Do you have any in mind? I want to use R, after all. I've used it a bunch of times so far, and I still have plenty of R's in my R key. So dim R as what type? Integer should be fine. All right, so if I'm controlling the loop, presumably that's going to keep track of which row I'm on. Where is R going to start? So probably row number 2 is the row that I'm going to start on. All right, talk to me about a loop. What should I put? Anyone want to talk me through this? Start with keyword do, end with the keyword loop. What else should I always put in right about here? Do events. All right, now I've got to do something to let me know when the loop ends. How should we know when the loop ends? Okay, so what you're saying is, hey, let's just keep doing until we bump into a blank cell. I think that'll be a fine way to do it. So loop until cells row number R, column number 1 dot value is equal to a 0-length string, an empty string. All right, that looks pretty good. I need one more thing. What is it? Yeah, I got to somehow change R because right now R is equal to 2, so that's the cell I'll be talking about. And if I don't put something in there to tell it to go somewhere else, it's always going to stay looking. It'll never be blank. So right above the do events, I'm going to throw in R equals R plus 1. All right, so that should give me a good loop structure that will allow me to iterate across this. And just to make sure it's working, I'm going to do a debug.print of the name. So that's going to be cells R, comma 1 dot value. So if I run that, it should just, if my loop is working correctly, it should just list off the names of my people. I don't know if they're customers or students or patients or whatever they are. Okay, so I'm feeling pretty good about that. I'm hoping that at this point, not only could you all follow this, but you could have done this. How many of you are saying, you know what? It'd take a little longer maybe, but I could have done that. Okay, that looks like pretty good coverage. Okay, so now what I need to do, here's where it gets a little more difficult. When I'm on this row, I've got to start here. Let's do this one. We can see all the numbers. When I'm on this row, I've got to start here, column number 4, and I've got to go across until I bump into a blank cell. So I don't know how many times I'm going to have to go. I just got to go until I hit a blank cell. Anyone want to take me through that one? Where should I go? We'll do this. I'll move the mouse pointer, and you cheer if I'm getting closer or colder, so what do you think? Okay, some of you are saying we got to do something here. What do you like? What do you like right here? Your new variables, what should we call it? C as an integer as well. Okay. Next place, where are we going to go? We're not quite so sure where to do the next thing. Okay, so I'm going to say that, listen, so when I'm in here, right here is where I'm printing off the name, right? So here's where I'm in charge, kind of in control of each one of these rows. And so let's put right here. What should we put right here? Okay, I heard someone say, let's assign C to 4 right here. That's interesting. Up here, just outside of when we're starting this loop, we're saying, hey, we got to set R to be where we want it to start. Now you're saying, I heard someone say we're going to make a loop here, but let's start by making C equal to 4 right here. Wait a minute. We're going to set C back to 4 each time we go to a new row? Yeah, that's right. When we start on this new row, boom, we want to start our column here, and we'll move it across. We get to the next row, we got to bring our column down and move it across. We move the row down and start the column back at 4 and move across. So that's good. All right, so now another do loop. Let's go ahead and put it in something similar. Do loop, do events, probably going to control it, C equals C plus 1, so we're going over by 1 each time. Now, how do I know when I'm done with this loop? Loop until what? Cells R, comma, C. Yeah, so whichever row I'm currently on, and then whichever column I'm currently looking on, I'm doing that until that value is equal to a zero-length string, quote, quote. Okay, so I think now we've got this set up pretty well. So we're going to, R is going to set it to be 2. We're going to set C to 4, so that'll be the first place we're thinking about. We're printing off the name of the student. We come into this, we're going to do something here, and then we're going to increment that and loop right here. So what can I print out here so that I can see that it looks like it's working? I'm still going to print the name of the student, and then what should I put here? So I want to make sure that the loop's doing what I think it's doing. Debug.print. What do you think? How about cells R, comma, C dot value? So I'm going to print out, so while R is 2 and we're counting up C, it's going to print off these numbers, 20, 77, 47. So I should see Ashley printed here, and then I should see, the first time I hit this one, 20. This loop will increment C to be 1 more, so C will be 5. We'll ask, is row number 2, column number 5 blank? Nope, and so we loop back up to the top, print off the next one, and we'll print those values out. So I've got a loop that's counting across my columns and a loop that's counting across my rows. This one I'm incrementing the column, the variable for my column. This one incrementing the variable for the row. So if I go ahead and run this again, then I should see here's Ashley. She starts with 20, then 77, 47, 21. Those are all right. And where does she end off? 9632. Yeah, 9632. Then we go to Barry. We'll check a couple here on Barry. Barry starts at 4397. 4397. Where does he end off? He ends off with a 49. That looks right. Always want to check. It's always a good idea to check the very first and the very last ones to make sure that they look right. So let's jump down to the bottom here. Who's our person here? Anna. She starts at 64, ends at 3. Here's Anna. Starts at 64. Uh-oh, we got something after the 3. Wait, 3, 4. Oh, there's 2 3s. 3, 41, 3. Looks like we've got it. Okay. So I feel like we've written the loop structure that's going to give me access to all of those numbers 1 row at a time. Now, by putting that, we've put a loop inside of a loop before when we were like deleting a bunch of cells. But now we're doing it to actually access the data, maybe a little bit more involved to do it here. So I'm expecting that you weren't as comfortable with nesting the loop, but I'm hoping that you're saying, at this point you're saying, I totally follow this. How many of you are with me? I'm absolutely following what's going on here. Okay. All right. Now, this next stuff is a little bit difficult as well. How am I going to figure out the average? Folks, let's set the Wayback Machine for 4th grade. You learned how to do an average, right? You add them all up, and then you divide them by the number of items that you added up. So what are we going to have to keep track of to be able to do that? Talk about the variables I need to be able to calculate this average. What should I do? Give me a name of a variable. Dim sum as... Yeah, I don't know. These are all integers right now, but there's no guarantee the next data that's coming in here is going to be integer. So single or double might be okay. In fact, I might just go ahead here with double. D-O-U-B-L-E. Because, I'm not quite sure how big these are going to get. I'll go with double. Single would probably be okay too. All right, what else should I have? Let's add them up. Okay, so I'm probably going to want an average and a max. Those are the values that I'm putting out here. So dim average as, go ahead and do that double as well. Dim max as, again, these could be decimals. What the heck, double. It's taking a little bit more memory, but I've got millions and millions of bytes of memory to use, and so I'm not too worried about it. Okay, anything else? Yeah. I'll need some way to keep track of how many I put into the sum. Now, truth is, I've got the column number, and I know these all start in column number 4. I could probably infer that, But let's go ahead and make the count. It'll make the code a lot cleaner. So let me count as, what type should this one be? Yeah, integer is probably good for this one. I'm not going to have 4.5 entries. I'm going to have 4.27 entries. It'll be a discrete number of entries. Any other variables I'm going to need to calculate? The average or the max? I'm feeling pretty good about these. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. So I'm going to be working probably inside my inner loop, because here's the statement that's actually printing out each one of those values. So let's first work on doing that sum. So someone help me figure out, what am I going to do with the sum? Sum equals. The first time I hit this line, I'm looking at this particular value. Go ahead.
So sum equals cells r comma c dot value.
Whoa, hey, that's neat. How about if I copy that? A lot of typing after all. And then I undo it, and then come over here. There we go. I'm with you. Plus sum what? Oh, sum. Good, yeah, so we're going to say we're going to put a new value into sum. It's going to be that number plus whatever it used to be. It'll start off at 0. And then we'll put 20 in it. We'll come down here, we'll increment c. This loop then sends us back up here. We're going to say sum is going to equal 20 plus 77. So at this point, it should be 97. We'll go through, we'll add on the 47. That should accumulate as we go. Good. Now, for us to be able to see the sum, we could do a debug.print, but why don't we just dump it off here into the average for now? I mean, we're going to ultimately replace that with the average. This will just let us kind of see those values. So let me come down here to right after we're finished with this inside loop. So when we're finished with this loop, we've gone across that whole set. I'm done making the sum for that row. And so let me go ahead and write that out here. So cells, whatever row I'm on, row number R, column number 2, I want to put it right here in the average, just temporary. That value is going to equal sum. And let's run it. Good. All right, so let's take a look at what we got. 705. Does that look about right? I don't know. Is it like 20? I guess I could probably actually put something in here, just in a sum. Just to kind of verify that I've got this right, I'll just put some values out there. Hey, it's looking pretty good. I got 705. Let's copy this down. Uh-oh. 705, 344. Aha! Go ahead, comment. Yeah, so here I have to define sum. Oh, give it an initial value. Okay. This is one of the things that gets a little bit tricky when we start working with loops, is that this works great the first time through because sum is going to start off as 0, just as all numeric variables do. But by the time I've run through this whole calculation, sum now equals 705. I get down here, this loop increments, or we increment R, so we're now looking at the next row, back up to the top here. Sum is still 705. I come into this loop here, and now I'm saying sum is going to equal what it used to be plus the next value here. You're right, I'm continually adding sum up. And if there was some reason I needed to know the total of all of these, that would be great, but I don't. I just need the total for that row. So what do I need to do? Go ahead.
Set sum to 0. That's the first loop.
Yes. So right here, just before I get ready to come into my second loop, I'm just going to say sum equals 0. So it starts off at 0 each time I come into this inside loop, because that inside loop is the one that goes right across. And so that's where we want it to be zeroed out. So I'm going to run this again. Hey, look at that. It's looking pretty good now. So now if I do my little check that I've got in here, yeah, it's summing those all up just perfectly. Great. Okay, trouble is, I don't need the sum. I don't care about the sum at all. It's an intermediate step to get to my average. So what's the next part I need for my average? I got to count how many times I've actually done that. So I've got a variable called count. What do? Count equals what? Count plus 1. What it used to. So the first time in here, Oh, I'm going to have the same problem here, aren't I? First time through, count's going to be 0, so it's going to be 0 plus 1, and then it will be 1, plus 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3, plus 1 is 4, and it'll go all the way across, and then I'll have that count. So instead of, but do you see how that's going to still hold its value at the end of the loop? I'll start again, it will still have the value from last time. So what should I do right here? Count equals 0. All right, so now I've got my count and I've got my sum. So at the end of the inner loop, I am going to go ahead and calculate my average. I made a variable called average. Average equals what then? Give it to me, someone. They got it right on the top of their tongue. It's just sitting there waiting to come out. Say it. Nobody? Oh, don't raise your hand. Just say it. Sum over count. Right, sum over count. Beautiful. Where am I typing? Oh, there it is. C-O-U-N-T. All right, so now that I've got the average variable defined, I can just drop that in instead of my sum into that location, and I think I'm golden. Oh, I should have deleted those sums because I could have just changed it to average and been in good shape. Let's just verify this. A-V-E-R-A-G-E. Yeah, so we're coming up with the same calculations that Excel is doing. Okay, average, done. Maximum brings in a little bit different, a little more complexity. So, anyone want to take me through this one? Anyone want to give this a thought? Go ahead.
Inside of your second loop, above that, there's a count set max to 0.
Max equals 0.
And then inside of the inner loop, do the cells are comma C.
If cells, row and column, dot value is greater than max, then max gets assigned.
Cells are comma C dot value.
Yeah, beautiful. Have you given some thought to this? Because that just rolled right off the top of your tongue. Okay, so let's think about this. We're setting max to 0. Then we're going to say, as we're inside this inner loop and we're looking at the first cell right here, first time I get this, R will be 2, C will be 4. I'll be looking at row 2, column 4. If 20 is greater than max, is that true or false? 20 greater than max, true or false? True. Right now, max is 0. 20 is greater than 0. So we come in here and we say, okay, max, whatever you used to be, I don't care, you're now going to be 20. We're reading the value off here. We increment our cell variable back up to the top of this loop. And so now we're looking at we increment our column variable, so now we're looking at the next one. Now we get here, we're saying if 77 greater than, what's max right now? 20. True or false? True. So max now gets the value 77. We increment the column back up to the top. That's the cell we're looking at. If the new value 47 greater than 77, true or false? False. So we skip this one. And we will only hit this when we find a value that's higher than our most recently added contender. So max is going to kind of keep getting higher whenever we find a higher value. And as we find lower values, nothing happens to it. I like it. That's going to calculate our maximum value. And so when we're done with that loop, we should have that. We should be able to now plop that into the next column over, column number 3. Its value is going to be max. We'll run that, and it looks like we've got those values. You might want to check them to make sure, do a couple of spot checks. Did it really get the maximum value? And that works pretty well. I like this really well, except for one thing. I don't really like setting max equal to 0. Why not? Yep.
The first value on your column could be the maximum. Like, whatever the value is on, whatever the value is that you can have, that's not the max,
So let's put 1,000 here. Are you saying this might be a problem? I think that's okay. Still going to find it there. Yeah. What's so small about 0? 0's not that small. I know a lot of numbers smaller than 0. -3 is smaller than 0. And so if I end up with a set that's all negative for whatever reason, I'm in trouble. So, yeah. I don't have a good solution for that. I might put a really large negative number in there. So what you might be saying here is, let's make our contender whatever the very first value is. Oh yeah, that's a pretty good way to do it. Yeah. So instead of that, I will just say, right here, max is going to equal whatever row I'm on, column number 4. And then we will do, probably no reason to start C at 4 now, we could start at 5. Oh yeah, you're right. Let's leave column 4 for the rest of those. Yeah, absolutely right. And that'll be okay. We're doing a comparison against the first one. It won't be greater, so it'll skip that the first time. So yeah, I like that a little bit better. Truth is, I'm looking at all these numbers. None of them are negative. Chances are this is a non-negative number set. It's like somebody's weight. No one's got negative weight. These probably aren't really weights. 77 pounds, 5 pounds. Anyway. But it would help if we knew something about the numbers. If we could rule out the possibility for a negative number, that'd be great. But since we can't, this is a little bit better. This is a little bit better solution. All right, that's the solution here. Any questions? Yes. Okay, so here's what's going to happen on the. Let me take you through what's going to happen on the final. You're going to come here. And you're going to get a 1-page print that has just a handful of questions. It's got like 5, 6, 7 questions on it. And they're going to be multiple choice questions. Which phase in the system development life cycle are you most likely to do a feasibility analysis? Something like that. And there'll be 7 phases there. You pick by the way, which one is where you might do a feasibility analysis? Yep. That's probably in planning. Yeah, so in planning, we're gonna decide, should we be doing this? Once we decide we're gonna do it, let's analyze the problem. That's the next step. Might want to review that section. We had 1 lecture on it. You got like 5 or 6 questions on that. You will do that without the use of your computer. It's okay if your computer's on, as long as you're not using your computer. So if it takes 20 minutes for your parallels to come up with Windows, make sure that's up before you start. But then kind of close the lid part way so you're not looking at it, set it on the seat next to you or something. Once you finish that paper, you're going to come turn it in, and I'm going to give you a separate piece of paper that has the URL where you can get the rest of the exam, where you can download the rest. And then that's going to be open internet. It's going to be, and that's where you're going to be writing code. It's going to be closed Excel file. So you're not going to be allowed to open up any other project or work that you've done. But if what you're looking for is syntax, then you can go to Google and find out. I can't quite remember how to spell do events. You Google and find out how to look it up. So look up syntax and stuff, but you're not going to be working off of any of your former examples. Why not? Because this is so painfully close to the final exam. We just can't let you do that. So you've got to be familiar with it. You will not have time to learn how to do the do loop during the final exam. But you may have time to look up the syntax to make sure you got the syntax. Okay, go ahead. Would I say the VBA portion of the exam is a lot longer than the practice problems? By practice problems, you mean the one we're working on today? I would say it's extraordinarily similar to what we're working on today. Oh, same number of problems? Yeah, I think there's 4 problems. I don't remember. There's not many more than 4, but I think there's exactly 4. They're kind of like, 1 for 1, the style you're dealing with here. Yeah. Final comprehensive. No, it's only since our last midterm exam. We could make it, let's vote. Who wants a comprehensive final? And Wow Guy wants the comprehensive final. Wow, that'd be a final. It's not comprehensive. It's just VBA, flowcharts, and SDLC. There's another question in here? Yeah. Okay, so here's a question. Do we have to make a flowchart and then make the VBA from the flowchart we make? No. Flowchart's a separate problem. And that flowchart, there's a couple ways you can do it. You could do it in, you could do it in Lucidchart or is anyone using Visio? Anyone? No. You can do it in Lucidchart if you want to. You can do it on paper, but if you do it on paper, you've got to give me a digital way to submit it. And so take a picture of it with your phone, and you're actually going to paste it onto one of the tabs in the Excel workbook where you're doing the rest of your thing. So you're going to have like 4 tabs writing VBA, and then 1 tab that's your flowchart, and you're going to have to get your flowchart electronically into there. You want to write with pencil? That's great. Make sure we can read it. Take a picture, get it on there. You'll be okay. Other questions? You have no idea how much you want to dismiss class right now. Felt like the end of the class. Any more questions? Anyone? No? Okay, look at that. We've only done 1 tab so far. Okay. Question in the back. How many flowchart? You're going to make 1 flowchart on the exam. You might say there's another flowchart question because you've got to be able to read a flowchart and write code for it. That's the next example we're going to do. So let's come to the data. What's that? The best in the final exam review. Have I mentioned that when I first looked at this, I thought I was looking at the final exam? I thought someone had posted the final exam by mistake? Yeah, nothing wrong with that at all. Yeah. It's good for you. Not so good for me because it means you're going to do really well on the final, and I'm going to get in trouble because you're all going to have A's or A minuses in the class. And that'll be an uncomfortable conversation, but I will just say my mantra. Remember, you have tenure. Remember, you have tenure. That's right. They'll come to the festival, whether I break character or not. Okay, so let's take a look at let's just take a kind of a high-level look at this diagram. This is the dating game. Who comes up with these examples? I'm not sure. Here, yeah. Single computing TAs trying to figure out how am I going to get a date. This is it. If only I could come up with the right flowchart, then maybe. See, the problem that I have with this flowchart is that it's missing a very critical question up front. The question is, are you married? So if I'm married, then the next question is the person you're considering dating your spouse? Yes or no? It's a really simple flowchart. Yes, go on a date. No, don't go on a date. That's simple. It's more simple for me. Now, if you're not married, then you've got kind of different questions to go through. And for whatever reason, this is what it is. Okay. What's that? Oh, yeah, it's there. It's just hard to see from way back there. I'll darken it in. I think it's just a little bit trimmed off, so there we go. You were actually reading the instructions. Very good. All right, so we're going to start here. We got to display what's the personality scale of 1 to 5. It's the personality index, and then we've got to take that input in. Now we say, is the personality less than 3? If it's less than, so if the personality is 1 or 2, we'll assume these are integers. If it's 1 or 2, then look, it doesn't matter what else. Don't date that person. Personality, you just don't do it. So if it's less than 3, you're done and end. That's the easy path. Now, what if it's not less than 3? What does it mean? If these are integer inputs, it's not less than 3. What are the possibilities here? 3, 4, and 5. So the next question is it equal to 3? This is like a borderline decision. You've got a 3 personality. Then we have to find out the cuteness index. So let's play how cute. Input the cuteness index. Then we say, aha. So now personality is exactly 3. Is the cuteness index less than 3? Yes, don't do it. But personality of 3 and a cuteness of 4 or 5, maybe 1 date would be okay to find out what's going on. That's the plan. Okay, so what if we got back here and the personality, so up here now we know the personality is 3, 4, or 5. If it's a 3, we go this way. If not, we go this way. So then what does the P value of P have to be if we come here? It's got to be 4 or 5. Yeah, because if it was 3, yes, took us this way. So that gets rid of 3, so now we got 4 or 5. And so what we're saying, hey, if this person's got a personality of 4 or 5, nothing else matters, go on a date. It's not an eternal commitment, it's just a date. Go. All right, so that's the flow chart. Now we've got to code it. Let's give it a shot. I'm going to zoom this back out a bit. How about if you, that's too far. All right, so let's go ahead and, Enter is not doing very much here. How come my whole keyboard is not doing very much? Have I saved lately? Good policy on the exam, save early, save often. Am I editing a cell by mistake? Must have been what it was. Save, file save. Okay, so let's make another sub-procedure. We'll call this dating. Call it dating. All right, now this has a lot less for us to have to think about, because all we're doing is saying we just got to map what's there into code. All right, so it looks like I'm going to have a variable p. Everywhere it says input, I've got to have a variable. And there should be, oh, look, there should have been a, what is this flowchart missing? Should be a legend here somewhere. Tell me what all the variables are. We're going to have to just kind of deal with that. No legend, okay. But I can see I've got an input of p, I've got an input of c, and that kind of looks like my only variables. Let me go ahead and make those. Dim p as, let's make it an integer, and dim c as an integer. Whoa. Okay, so step one is to display something. I got two options. Well, there's more in Excel. What are my options to display? I could write something out to a worksheet. What else? I could put a message box. What else? An input box also has display to it as well. Now, I'm noticing here the very next thing I have to do is input. So I look at that pair and I think, you know what? Input box can kind of kill two birds with one stone. I like it. Let's use the input box. So P equals input box. Here's the prompt. Enter the personality index. And that's 1 through 5. What's the next thing here? Title. What's the title going to be? I don't know. I'm tired of thinking about the title, so I'll just close it off there. Title's optional. Default value is optional. We'll just leave that as there. All right. So that gets us to this point. Next, follow this flow, and next I get to a decision diamond. What do I put? Without even thinking, what can I put in here? 4 words. What would they be? If, then, else, and if. And if, I guess, is technically 2 words that are kind of squished together, but so if, then, else, and if. E-N-D-I-F. Oh, it is. Yeah, it's 2 words. It's not squished together in this language. Sorry. It's 5 words. What's that? Yeah, if we have an else if, that would be squished together. Okay. All right, so now I got to look at the condition, and I'm just going to try to keep it as close to what's shown here as possible. P less than 3. I'm going to put that same thing here. So P less than 3. So where they say yes, that's going to be in the true block. So this says display don't date him or her. So how do I just show up the value without accepting anything being typed in? MSGBOX. Run away. This is critical. We're going to give them critical warning here. And don't even think about it. I don't know. What do we put in the title? I don't know the title. I'll leave the title off. Okay. Okay, so now we've handled that. We've done this says display something, and so we just displayed that. Now the question is, if I follow this through, it's going to take me to the end. And so if I drop right to, how does this execute? This executes here. It gets to the else, and then where does the interpreter go? It jumps past this block, goes to the end if, and then that's the end sub. We're done. So I think we're okay. That follows us all the way to the end. Now we follow this one. If P is not less than 3, then we come down to here. That's this part right here. right? If P is less than 3, we come here. If it's not less than 3, we come here. Now, I see another diamond. What do I do? I don't even have to think about it. What do I do? If, then, else, and if. Write it in. I think I'll want to be spaced in a little bit. So if, then, else, and if. Now I look at this condition, P equal to 3. All right, I'll write that in here. P equals 3. Then we'll do something. I think I'm going to dodge this one for a while because it looks kind of long. And let's come down to the else. Because if P equals 3 is false, then I just have another display and I'm done. So I'll display, and this should be, what does it say to there? Definitely date. Definitely date. Reminds me of a song that I was just absolutely certain that Vocal Point sang, but I can't find the recording. Did anyone ever hear this song? It was had kind of a calypso beat to it. It was about a son who wants to date. He's found a girl on the island that he wants to date, and he asks his father advice. And can I date this girl? Have you heard this song? No, I don't think so. See, the thing was, I was certain it was Vocal Point. I can't find the recording, and it's a little bit racy for Vocal Point, because the father says, "Son, I got to say no because the girl is your sister, but your mama don't know." Can you imagine Vocal Point singing that song? I can't find the recording. I was certain it was. Okay, so anyway. Finally, I just thought I'd tell you the story in this song. Finally, so it happens, over and over. It happens 3 or 4 times, and finally the boy goes to his mother. I'm recording this. I'm in trouble now. The boy goes to his mother. He bowed his head. He told his mother what his father said. And his mother said, "Son, go, man, go, because your papa ain't your daddy, but your papa don't know," something like that. It's okay. He's not really your daddy anyways. So the title here is going to be Go, Man, Go. Okay. Go, man. Okay. Now, here's the question. So I think we've handled this, right? So we get to the end of this, we hit the end if, and we're to the end, so we're okay. So now we got this meaty section in the middle, and that's right here. Looks like we got to get some more information, so we're coming into an input box. Enter the cuteness index. What's that? Oh, I think we've made the variable. I think we've declared C. I just haven't. You're right. I need to collect it here. So C equals enter cuteness index 1 through 5. Okay, so I've displayed that. I've input the C. That looks pretty good. And what do I go to right here? Another decision diamond. Do I even have to think at this point? No. If, then, else, and if. All right, now what's the condition? If C is less than 3, C less than 3, then what do? Display at least one date won't hurt. Oh, I'm sorry, this is the true. Oh, that's the false. You're absolutely right. Let's move this down to the false. Now, this isn't VB critical. This is more like VB informational, so I'll put an information on that. It just gives it a different sound when it rings and a different icon. That's not critical. Okay, so if it's yes, display don't date him or her. So that's the same thing here as run away. Critical, I'll put that here. Either way from those two, we're done, we're over and done. And that's exactly where we would drop. Drop to the end if, we hit the else, we drop to the end if, and we're done. So this is a 3-level nested if. Is 3 levels of nesting kind of a lot? Yeah. Folks, past 2 levels of nesting, it gets really hard for the old human processor to be able to follow it. And in this case, we've got 3, but that's the logic. So that's why it's important to kind of follow the thing. We get to that point and say, okay, put that in without having to think about it. We're just mapping from the things. Question here, then here. Okay, so the question is, can we just put C equal to input box and then put this somewhere else, right? That's what you're asking? Where do you want to put it? Right here? Oh, yeah, you're right, sorry. Here, after we've done that whole if, we come here. Okay, so let's just explore that. So the problem is, before what we were saying is, once we display don't date him or her, we're done. But now, here's where we're saying don't date him or her. We drop to the end if, and now we have another, if to deal with. And we haven't, at this point then, we haven't given C a value. And so that's going to be a problem. So we should probably give C a value here. But either way, we're going to get another message box that we probably don't want to get. So I think that's probably not such a good idea. And as much as I would like to avoid nesting deeply, I think it kind of requires to be nested in here. There was a question here.
So we assume that they
You're saying assume the input's right? Assume the input's right. If you like, we've got a little time, I can show you how we might check to be sure the input's right and deal with it, but so checking validating the input is not required for the exam. It's not, and it's because there's no logic here for the validation of input. Okay? It's a reasonable thing to add, even though the algorithm doesn't specify it, and you might argue that that's somehow dependent on the implementation, and so something that has to be added in, even though it's not in the diagram. But you will not have to extend beyond what the diagram does. The diagram says do this, great, do that, assume the input is valid.
Could you have the p is equal to 3 as an else if underneath the p is greater than if?
Ooh. Here's the question. What I did was I put an else here, and then without thinking about it, I said, aha, down here in this block, I've got another decision diamond. Just plug in another if statement here. Now the question is, hey, there's this kind of more elegant way to write some of this stuff, and that is just make this an else if. And the answer is yes, we totally could have made this an else if. The reason I'm not doing the else if here is not because there's anything that's more elegant about this. In fact, it actually brings nesting, which I could avoid, which I would prefer to do. But the nice thing about the approach that I'm teaching you here is I don't have to think so much about that. I just get to this point, I say, okay, I'm following that flow right here. I've got another diamond, great. If, then, else, if, and then we're moving on. As you get more kind of comfortable with this and maybe more familiar with some of these more advanced notations, the else if, then I totally encourage you to do that. But especially here where we're saying map this problem, you want to keep your syntax as close to what this is showing as possible. And that would be to have these just be separate, independent, if then else statements. So if you do add in an else if, that's totally fine, full credit solution. Okay. Questions? I think we've done this, but it'd be a good idea for us to check it and make sure that it works. So let's check it, and then we'll take a look at the question of doing some data validation. So I'm going to run this, F5 will let me run it. Enter the personality index. That's the first question right here. Let me take me through this first path here, which is going to be a personality of less than 3. I'll put in 2. We'll say OK, run away, and we're done. We'll try it again. Personality index. This time let's go ahead and put in something greater than 3. This is a 5. This person's totally a 5. Okay, definitely date. Uh-oh, we've got a critical. I'm not sure that really goes with critical, but I'm okay. We at least get the definitely date. So that is greater than 3. Here's when it equals 3, we branch out here, but greater than 3, definitely date, and we're done. That looks pretty good. Run it again. Now let's put in the 3. Now we have to enter the cuteness index. So let's put the cuteness index as high. 5 cuteness. At least 1 date won't hurt, and that is C greater than 3. Wait a minute. Is C less than 3. What did I put in? I put in 5. So C less than 3, no. So we come here, at least 1 date won't hurt, and then we should end. That looks great. Only one more path to check as we go through this. Personality of 3. Cuteness 1. Run away. That's our don't display, And then that should finish and end. So we've checked all the paths through there, and it looks pretty good. Questions? Yeah. Oh, assign the macro to the button. Yeah, very good. How do we assign the macro to the button? Right click, assign macro. It's called dating. We say OK, and we're in good shape. Personality index 55. Definitely date. Now, so the question is, what do we do if the personality index is outside the boundaries? Let's take a look at that one. It's not on the diagram, so it's not required, but let's take a look at it. It's a reasonable thing to think. This is supposed to be 1 through 5, so let's just check it. If P is greater than 5, then we'll do something. Else and if. If P is greater than 5, we got a problem. Message box. Invalid input. Invalid data. Maybe we'll put personality. No one has that good of a personality. Try again. That's going to be critical because that's like an error. And then we'll put user error. All right, so if it's not greater than 5, it could be less than 0. It's another option. Or no, less than 1. The range is 1 to 5. So here I'll put another if inside this one. If P is less than 0, then else and if. So if P is less than 0, no one has that low of a personality. We'll just change it, put the same message, but we'll just change it. No one has that low of a personality. Try again. Ooh. So if it's not greater than 5 and it's not less than 0, what does that mean? It's okay. So right in here where we have this else, we could take this whole structure and plop it right in there. We could nest this if thing even deeper. To avoid that, let's do this. Once I display this message box, I'm going to say we're done. Exit sub. And so that's going to be another way for me to kind of skip by everything else that's below here. In fact, might not be a bad way to put exit sub every time we have a map to the end. Go here to end, you can just always say exit sub because that would end. We'll do the same thing on this one. So now if we go through the else gate here, there's nothing to display and we just move on. In fact, anytime we have an else with nothing in it, it's totally superfluous. We can just get rid of it. Question? Oh, yeah. It's a close cousin. All right, so now we're pretty good. So now let's put in 6. No one has that high of a personality. All right, we'll try again. We'll put in 0. No one has, run away. I put less than 0. It should be less than 1. So I have an error here. If P is less than 1. The valid range is 1 to 5. Put in 0. No one has that low of a personality. Try again. And we're feeling pretty good. So hopefully now if I put in like a 3, let's put in a 5, which is valid range. Definitely date, and we're done. Okay, let me now then bring in this other question and kind of show this to you. Someone asked about the else if. So it turns out whenever I have an else followed directly by another if statement, we can actually bring that if right up here on the same line with the else and make it into one word. And now we've got just one if structure that's a little more complex. If P is greater than 5, then we do this. Else, check to see if it's less than 1. Then we do this, and we can still have an else in here if we need it for anything. So now we can check multiple things with one structure. And it really does make the code a lot cleaner because it can take out a lot of other things that would otherwise be nested. But again here, if you're looking at this going, I don't want to deal with that else if, it's a new word, it's totally unrequired. It's not necessary. But it does make the code quite a lot cleaner because it just gives one level of nesting without going way down. Go ahead.
So what about if they entered a letter instead of a number?
What if they entered a letter? Yes, but it's a problem. Let's take a look. Let's see what happens. First, let's see what happens if they enter a letter. Whoops. We'll run this. Personality index 1 through 5, 3. I mean, that's a valid way to say 3. Is Excel going to be able to look at it and go, oh, I know what you mean? Totally not. And we get what's called a type mismatch. Here. Integer. And this is going to return what? A string, THREE, collection of characters. And the VBA interpreter is going, no can do. I just can't figure it out. Now, actually, I'm a little upset because I would think, I spelled it out 3. It seems like it should figure that out, but it doesn't. I'd kind of like it to, but it doesn't. So I can't even get that value into the variable where I can look at it. So what's my solution? I've got to accept the value into something that I'm sure that I can take it. Input box is going to return a string. So I'll dim another variable up here. I'll call it user data as a string. Now I'll say user data equals input box. Now this can't fail. Input box is guaranteed to return a string. I'm going to accept it back into a string. Now I can look at user data and do whatever I want to with it. And in fact, there is a function for this very thing. It's called isNumeric. I just want to know if it's a number. I'll say if, then, else, and if is numeric, user data, then, how about this one then? Let's take a look at this. So here's a string that says 1,000. Is that a string or is it an integer? In quotes, it's a string. Let me execute this line here. So now I can, even though it's a string, I can ask if that's a number. Is numeric? And that will now return true or false. That's true. If this is not a number, like an X in front of it, it'll say false. So if what the user typed in is numeric, then I'm going to say P equals user data. Otherwise, message box, and maybe I'll just spell it out to him. User data concatenated with space is not valid or is not a number. Critical. User error. So now when I run this, I'm going to put in something that's non-numeric. ASDF is not a number, and oh, whoops. What did I forget to do? Yeah, I got to get out of here. So I sent that message box, exit, sub. And the personality, AZXC. AZXC is not a number, and we're done. So I still have, I still have other problems I could run into here. I mean, the valid range for integer is 32,000 plus or minus 32,000. What if I put in 40,000? That's going to be a number, but it's not going to fit into the variable. So I can have other things in here to check to make sure that it's in the right range, or maybe I could just, that's probably the best thing to do, check to make sure that it's in the range, and then assign it, and then let it go. So it turns out that folks, trying to anticipate everything that a user could do is staggering. It's staggering. It's a mind-boggling thing to have to do. So we don't ask you to do it here in this class, right? So we're just assume that the data coming in is okay, but just realize that in the real world, yeah, that's one thing. What's another approach, by the way, besides trying to figure out everything the user could have typed in? What else could I do? Yeah. Yeah, we could make a loop for that. Now, don't talk to me in terms of what you know about VBA. Talk to me about what you've seen in the world of computers. What would be another approach to bring this data in? Yeah. Yeah, give them a drop-down box. The only thing you can do is choose a value on this drop-down box, and one of them is already chosen. You can't give me, you can give me the wrong data, but you can't give me invalid data. And so in that situation, we could just say, yeah, we don't have to validate it. It's the only thing it could be is 1 through 5. It's the only possible choice that the user could plug in here. And can we do that with VBA? Yeah, we just can't do that in VBA in 5 days. I mean, to do that takes a thing called a user form, and it's a whole level of complexity. Plug in the commercial for IS 520, where we spend the whole semester on VBA, and you will learn everything there is to know and more. Okay, other questions here? All right. Oh my gosh, what time is it? It's time for me to go look at the Declaration of Independence. 3 minutes to go. Clue batch. Hey, this is just like the thing we did in Clue. The only difference is, besides creating the count, it's like we got to keep track of the percentage of the total. We're not going to have time to do this one, but talk me through it. Any thoughts? How are we going to get the percentage of total? Count divided by the total. Good. So, but when are we going to know the total? We can't know the total until we're done. So we might be filling on all these variables as we're going through the code. Oh, and then we'll write them out when we're done. Yeah, so that's fine. And then we have to keep track of what the total count is and then do a little bit more math there. So that's really a pretty simple extension. Question? What if there's an arbitrary number of spaces? Yeah, I don't think we're going to do that to you on the exam. Yeah, the exam's going to be, it will be, well, you know what, now I'm not quite exactly sure. But we're not, that's a pretty complex thing to do. I'm not doing that to you on the exam. In this case, yeah, R plus 4 would work, and if we've got something like this on the exam, and there will be something like this on the exam, then incrementing by a certain number will be okay. Question? Web query thing, what do you think? Let's vote. Web query on the exam, yes or no? Yeah, no. I would love to give you the web query on the exam because I think that's so fabulously powerful that I want you to be able to do that. We have one little network hiccup during that exam, and I have a line outside my door about a mile long. I don't want that. That's not good for me. It's not good for you. It's not good for the carpet. So, yeah, there's not going to be any requirement that's going to be, once you get that file to your machine, you could turn off your internet and you'd be okay until you submit. Other questions? Yes?
So, last chapter you went over a lot of string manipulation. How is that it's really important to master string manipulation as well?
Should you master string manipulation for the exam? Yes. Left, right, mid, replace, in string. You better be familiar with those. Left, right, mid, in string, replace. TAs, am I missing anything that they're going to need for sure to know on strings? That should cover you for strings. Oh, split. I think you can probably get by without split. TAs are shaking their heads about split. I don't know if it's because they think it's a bad idea or it's not going to be on the test, but I think you're okay without split. Split's pretty complex. Powerful, but not on the test. I hope. All right. Anything else? Folks, before we dismiss, 2 things. Number 1, this is my first time teaching the class. You've been very understanding, and I feel like you've kind of helped me to come along, and so I want to say thank you for being understanding with some of the hiccups that we've had. Number 2, I hope to see you at the Colonial Heritage Festival. If you're in town, come and see me. I'll be making paper, and I'd be thrilled if you'd come. With that, study tomorrow. I will see you here on Wednesday. Class dismissed. All right, be good.